Because then I found out you were fluent in Chinese. And that was the thing that I think was the most challenging part of Will. Because she needed to speak Chinese, and Alice could tell that I didn't speak it very well. And so I think that was the big hump I had to overcome, right, for Will.
Yeah, I think so. I think, and just so you know, what happened is, because initially when Will was conceived of, she actually spoke Mandarin quite fluently, and initially there was even more Mandarin in the movie. But I fell in love with Michelle and how, like, her work ethic and how she really, like, you know, worked to make Will such a compelling character that I ended up changing my mind on, like, something I was so sure about. And she also flew to Taiwan and, like, took, like, Chinese Mandarin lessons for about 3 months.
Twice for 3 months, yeah.
Yeah.
To do the immersion.
Yeah, and like I recorded all the lines in my voice, and so she apparently listened to all the lines in my voice to get them down. And then we met like 2 weeks before we were shooting, and I quickly realized, like, this is kind of madness to try and get someone to speak Mandarin fluently on such a short timeline. And so I was like, oh, and I don't know if some of you may know this, but like Chinese people are super picky. And so you try and pass anything off as like, oh yeah, this person speaks fluently, and they're slightly off. All just like, I don't believe this character. It's just like, and so I was like, oh, and then I quickly just reconceived the character. I said, you know what? She's just gonna speak English half the time with her mom. She's gonna be someone who speaks Shinglish. Her Mandarin doesn't have to be that good. This doesn't have to be my exact relationship with my mom. Like, this is actually more real in a way, and maybe the mom can't understand English. It's like, I mean, it didn't change the script so much, but it really changed a lot of the layers, I think, of what that means when you use language, right? Like, what lines did Will, like, I went through the script and very intently figured when she's speaking Mandarin, there's a reason. She's maybe trying to ingratiate with herself with her mother. She's maybe trying to comfort her mother. And so those became the only lines. And I knew Michelle's Mandarin at that point was good enough, certainly, to do that. And I think that was a blessing in disguise, because honestly, I think it made the movie much richer. And so, yeah, but it was because of her. I was like, I'll totally change it.
I'll tell you that actually really affects, like, I'll tell you a little about myself. I grew up with a mother who speaks another language, and so I definitely felt it, you know, being a child of that. And I think it really makes it relatable to every culture, everyone who has this situation or relationship with their mother. So I think it was the right choice. It's my opinion.
It's really the only choice.
Well, it was I want to talk a little bit about Vivian Leeds, because I sobbed with Vivian Leeds, and I want to know how that was for you to walk away from love.
I remember that day really vividly. We were shooting at the TWA terminal, which doesn't exist anymore. They changed it.
It's still there.
JFK. And it was all to ourselves. We had the whole place to ourselves. And I remember we had, it was technically difficult because we were walking and had to keep having to stop. And this was my first film, so I wasn't that comfortable working where you had to like keep hitting your marks like consistently whilst talking. And I just remember it being like, you know, like having to practice a lot before we finally got to that point. So that, you know, by the time we had done it, what you're seeing is having had done it many, many, many times. More so, because everything else was like 1 or 2 takes, we were moving pretty quickly. But that one I remember I was like, oh man, take 7, oh, okay, here we are again. I think that was also one of my first times working with a, I can't even think of the name of it, the guy with the Steadicam, yeah, with the Steadicam operator. So that was like also very new for me. But you know, it was, when did we shoot that? It was like in the middle of the shoot, right?
It was closer to the end. I would say we were 2/3 of the way through, because that was the hardest location to get. So I was so insistent about it being, I think we were like the last film that shot there before. Like the film that shot right before us there was called Catch Me If You Can, which is a gigantic budget film. And it's funny if you watch those era prints and you can tell how much more money they had, versus how much money we had. But yeah, I just love the build. I mean, that building looks incredible. So
Every time I fly into JFK and I see that terminal, I get really or like nostalgic.
You don't start sobbing about how you walked away from love. She said she loved you.
That was the day my parents were visiting.
Oh yes, I do remember that.
My parents were visiting, and they had never been on set before. They had no idea what a trailer was. But my trailer, because it was an indie film, was really tiny, and it had a bathroom and a sink and a bench. And I remember after shooting that scene, my mom would be like, "We go back to your bathroom?" Like, yes, we're going to the bathroom now. Go to the bathroom. And my character, Will, was on the outdoor of my room, and somehow people would find out that we were on location, but they would confuse Will for Will Smith. And so they'd be waiting for Will Smith to come out of this tiny little bathroom. I'd be like, Will would not be using this.
Will's trailer would be huge. Did he ever stop by set?
No.
I think that would have been so
But
cool.
I will say, though, that he did take one of the actors, like Otto Asako, who plays Jay in the movie. He got cast in Hitch afterwards because of his work.
Excuse me. Do you remember your audition?
Yes, I do. And actually, I just moved recently, so I was getting rid of a lot of stuff. And the sweater I wore to the first audition was this scratchy blue turtleneck J. Crew sweater, and it itches so much. And as I was getting rid of stuff, I remember I was like, oh, this is my lucky sweater. I can't get rid of my lucky sweater, so I put it in the garage. It's got stains. It's like not an attractive sweater anymore. But I remember that day I came in, and all I had were sides, which were just like, this was just the scene from the vending machine scene. And there wasn't that much, character. There was nothing written in the character that said this is a lesbian, and so and it was just like them talking to each other, but there was nothing in it that was like she's coming on to her. So I read it and like, oh, they're friends. Oh, she's being so nice. And I remember after my audition, I don't remember if Heidi, the casting director, came up to me right afterwards, or if she called my agent. But immediately after, they were like, "Have you read the script?" And I didn't have access to it, so I was like, "No." She's like, "You should read the script." And I was like, "Okay." So I got the script, I read it, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, okay, I get it now."
Wait, so your friends say things to each other? Like sometimes your body knows what you really want?
I said come on, girl. Yeah. So then I understood, and I really wanted that part. But I was also young enough in my career that I just was like I said, this is my first film, so I was sort of just like, yeah, all scripts are this good. Yeah, all opportunities are like this. And like as the audition process went on, I auditioned maybe, I guess, 1, 2, 3, 4 more times for it. Once with Michelle. And I don't know, I was just so excited about it. I've never felt this way again, by the way, in my career since. But I just knew it was mine. Even though it hadn't officially been offered to me yet, I just knew in my heart. I felt that way about many parts since, and that has not gone my way. But I just knew in my gut that it was mine. And a lot of that had to do with their interest. Being like, you're still in the running, so that was sort of how I knew. And I really, devoted myself to, I remember I did the New York City Ballet workout.
Now you're a pro ballet.
Yes, I'm a pro. But I did, when I found out Michelle had been cast, because when I was testing with her, actually right before I met her, I found out she'd been cast, and I was like, Michelle Krusiec, I Yahoo'd it or whatever existed, Alta Vista'd it at the time. And I found out what movie she had been in, and the only movie I had access to was Pumpkin, right? And I remember watching Pumpkin and being like, that's her? That's Will? That's the awkward doctor? She's so cool and cute. And all the photos of you online were like you at Sundance, like promoting Pumpkin. I was like, this girl? But I was like, she's so cool. I had like a little girl crush on Michelle before I met her. Then I met her and we got to do the scene together. It was great. Also because, the other people that I had seen going in for Will before that were not like Michelle at all. I remember girls in scrubs, like, in the waiting room, like, oh, okay.
I mean,
Who are they? Who are they?
For me, for both these characters, there was not even like a backup second that would be okay. It was like them, and then it was like if not them, I would just have to spend months and months continuing to look. There was not like, okay, well then maybe. My casting directors were like, well, what about? And I was like, no.
But it's funny because as I mean, Will to me was I thought, because I used to be a dancer, I was like, this is great, I could use my dance background, but then when Will was introduced as the idea, I really was like, oh, I really have no idea what to do with this character, because I have no idea what this girl wants. It was not clear to me at all what this character wanted. But I kept reading the script, and the more I read it, the more I got to know Alice, I'd be like, this kind of reminds me of I feel like this character's a little based, it's not like Alice. So then I started to kind of study Alice. Is that,
No, it's totally fine. It's actually quite funny because we'll finish your story and then I'll
I
tell you
started
something.
to kind of, maybe we're going to tell the same story. We've done this a few times. but I started to realize, oh, Alice is kind of awkward. and she would carry herself a certain way, so I started trying to kind of study her and physicalize her. And I remember specifically we did a wardrobe fitting where they showed me a bunch of clothes, and they're like, these are all Will's clothes. And I was like, oh, okay, this is pretty cool. Because I also did not know what they were in the dress. And I finished my wardrobe for all of Will's stuff. I was in the room changing, and Alice came in, she went right to Will's clothes, she goes, I like these, are these good? And then the costume designer and I looked at each other and were like, okay, that's definitely, that's when I knew. I was like, oh, I just got to keep using Alice as
I don't remember that. I do remember though when the wardrobe, the costume designer was showing me the clothes, and she was showing like Vivian's clothes. I had no idea what to do with them. I'm like, sure, seems fine, like whatever you think. And then I was like, oh, these are amazing. Like, I didn't realize.
I think you actually wanted some of the
I did. But so the funny thing is, I don't know, I've never seen myself on video. In fact, there's on the DVD, there's apparently a making of the movie. I've never seen it because I don't want to watch myself on video. I think it would make me never want to, move or be in public again. So I did not know, because in my head, I think I'm cooler than I actually am. And so
You are.
No, I'm not. And I know this because I knew that when I met Michelle, she was like very flowy and dancing. I'm like, okay, that's not right for Will. And we would keep talking about it, and then, we run through it. But I didn't really process the fact that she was actually imitating me as it went on. I just thought, oh, she's really getting this character. Until, I literally, after the first week of shooting, I was like, I remember this moment where I was standing there by the monitor, and I'm giggling at something Michelle's doing, and I'm thinking wow, what a geek. And my producer was like, she's doing you. That is what I like. And then it got reinforced when a couple days later we're shooting the scenes in Vivian's apartment, and so we're shooting nights. That meant lunch was at 4 a.m. and lunch is usually the time when the producers converge on you, and basically converge on the director and then just beat them up. And they're just like, you gotta make it shorter, you gotta cut shots. And so I'm sitting there like, okay. And I hear there's another table somewhere that's erupting in laughter. Michelle's sitting there at the head saying something, and there's 80 people in this room, right? And I look around, Michelle's like, hey, Alice, look, and she's doing some walk. She's like, this is you. I'm like, oh my God, that is how I walk. I'm really totally horrified. I knew she was a good enough actor that was probably true. And so, and also they were laughing, this is how you laugh. Apparently I bust out laughing. You said, I did not know that. And so I remember having any director, any filmmaker that's an indie And I'm like, I promise you that person was not cool or popular in high school. Because I think there needs to be some level of, I don't know, like it's so hard to do. I think there's some part of you that like needs to have gone through great adversity to want to even do this. But I think you think, like now I'm a filmmaker, some little part of you thinks maybe I'm cool now. And in that moment, like literally watching that, I was like, I am not cool. But it was also probably the greatest moment of self-acceptance I've ever, because at some point I was like in my 30s, I'm watching this, and like it's like a nightmare, right? Like a big nightmare when you're growing up is the lunchroom thing, where you will come in and everyone's laughing at you. But this was like a great reappropriation of that, because everyone was laughing, but they were doing it very lovingly, where they're like, hey, Alice, look at this! And I was like, you know what, they're still willing to follow my direction, so maybe I So apparently this is what I have to work with, and this is just what it's going to be. So that was like the moment I kind of was like, all right.
Well, for Halloween, somebody in the production took a picture of Alice and made masks out of it for all of us. So for Halloween, we all wore Alice Wu masks. It was really weird.
It was so strange.
But I think really we all adored you. We all adore you. So it was really kind of a love fest on that movie.
It was, yeah, it was. A slight embarrassing coda to that. I think you hear that story is that despite the fact I'm like, oh, I had all this self-acceptance, I do remember later on that night at like maybe 5 a.m. or 6 a.m., we had like a 5-minute break or 10-minute break, and I was off by myself. I was like practicing a new walk. Comes around the prop and sees me and it's just like, Alice, stop that. That's no more freakish than your usual walk.
Would you like to practice some more?
I'm not even gonna lie, I'm gonna have someone carry me out of here now.
I feel like we're all gonna watch it now. Come on. Were you inspired by anyone for your character?
You know, I think you may have said something to me like, she's more sophisticated. Like, I thought of her as like sweaty and like she had been dancing and like her hair's like she was just like a liberated woman. And she was like, you know, messy and walked around without makeup and, you know, and I remember you being like, no, she's a little more sophisticated than that.
I don't remember sophisticated.
Or like, but you were like, you know, you're like, she's slinky.
Yes.
I remember you saying she's slinky, and I was like, so then, yeah, definitely I had to like class her up a little bit. Like, she wouldn't walk around with her tank top and her bra strap showing out, which is what I had envisioned. And I was like, okay, well then I guess she would shower and change.
I mean, that's true. We did get to see her. She was wearing a tank top with no bra.
Yes, exactly.
But I do remember telling you, basically, it's Vivian's world, the rest of us are just living in it.
Yes, yes. And I also loved that she had her colors, which I still to this day like use whenever I like show up on a set and they're like, "What colors look good on you?" I'm like, a mauve, a dark mauve, usually around my neck, and a teal. The teal looks really good on me. Like those were Vivian's colors.
I didn't realize that was a thing.
Oh yeah.
That's amazing.
I mean, her walls, even in her, because we redid her her apartment like the day before. And it was like a completely, like no one else was living in that apartment building. It was this like loft in Brooklyn, maybe?
It was, we just got it because they were still about to rent it out. We got it for 1 day.
Yeah, so like the walls had been painted this green and yeah.
I mean, I love Pedro Almodovar, and so I told my production designer, I really want a palette that is very sort of like Almodovar-esque, like I want those colors. Especially because there's a very sort of romantic sort of, well, I think New York is very romantic, and I really want to make this feel almost slightly European.
The sets on this film were incredible. For an indie film, did you shoot in a subway and on a bus?
Okay, so yes, but here's the thing. If you really saw what most of our sets were like, you'd be like, oh no, this isn't indie. But like, we just had, like, often it'd be like, we can only shoot this direction because everything on this side is like not dressed, right? So we're doing a lot of cheats, but we had to save money in the budget for, like, I wanted to shoot on the subway. Like, the subway is very important to me in New York, and so we did do some of that legally, like shooting on the subway platform. We had to, right? Like there's a permit, we got that. So all the subway platform machines, which all happened within like 5 hours, the 5 hours we had it. And then all the scenes on the subway themselves were not legal. They were basically, the producer was like, okay, I'm gonna give you this camera, and you just need to make sure it's checked in by morning. I don't wanna know. And so I and my DP and Michelle went off, and she actually fell asleep on one, which is weird. And she took,
I think the shot is of me sleeping.
yeah, and I'm
Like
really
really
asleep. Like, okay, sure now. Yeah, and so all those were not, technical. Were not illegal.
There's a gray area. It was fine. I want to open it up to fan questions because this is for you. So there is a stand, and if you line up behind it, I will come over with a microphone. But while you're lining up, I will ask, what was your favorite memory from the set? Yeah, no pressure. Make it a good one.
Just the first one that pops into my head is meeting Joan Chen for the first time, because she's a huge reason why I became an actor. After seeing The Last Emperor when I was a kid, I just remember seeing her and just being floored. And I remember the day she showed, she was a little late to the table read, a lot late, like we had already started. And she like came in, threw down her purse, was like speaking Chinese, and then like took off her jacket, and then went right into Mom. And I was like, oh my God, that's acting! And yeah, Joan's still a friend, and like, it's such a wonderful memory of the first time I met her, and she's actually still like that.
I hope you're now like that. Like you walk in and also do it. Oh, this is what I learned how to be an actor.
I'm the one who's like 20 minutes early, like waiting. I hope I didn't get fired.
I think for me, it's not so much a memory as it is a feeling. And I have to really thank you guys because, we shot this movie a long time ago. And I feel like it captures a chapter in my life where I had worked, not a ton, but enough to have warranted getting a lead role in a film. And by that time, because I just assumed, oh, I'm going to go for, Vivian, or there's sometimes an assumption you have to work really, really hard, and you have to like have blood, sweat, and tears, and with blood pouring out of your eyes before somebody gives you an opportunity in Hollywood. And so when Alice gave me that opportunity, it kind of marked a passage, a rite of passage for me. And I think this movie is that for me. It's a beginning point in my career that marks now you're able to graduate and keep doing this kind of deep work, because the role was complex and so rich, and the other actors who really got to play, we had a rehearsal process. It was a very idyllic, even though it was an indie film, it was a very idyllic time. So when I think of this, and when I'm invited to events like this, I'm able to kind of sit back and experience that again, because it's not easy being an actor, it's not easy working in Hollywood, but this film has a really special place in my heart. And when I find out that people still enjoy the movie, I'm like so deeply grateful that you guys still find connection and allow me to experience that again. So thank you. So I'm sorry.
There's so many good memories from the shoot that it's hard to pick out one, but what I would actually say is maybe one of my absolute favorites is like last night. Like the fact is we still have remained friends over the years, and we still have very deep conversations. And I think the thing about this movie that's surprising to me is how much it changed my life, not just in terms of the movie itself, but in terms of like who's in it. Like I still consider these two among my closest friends. Joan is like one of my absolute best friends. We both live in San Francisco. And I can't imagine what my life would be without the influence of like you guys. And the fact that last night we were all like, we just slipped right back into the way we are. Like we've known each other for like 11 years now, for like 12 years, And it's amazing to me. Thank you so much for coming. It's amazing to me that this is even still relevant enough that you would come like 12 years later, 11 years later. But definitely, I'm just very, very grateful that you guys signed on.
I just have a yes, it's great. Joan, because we are all friends. I remember after doing the movie, I was asking Joan for like love advice. And you know, I grew up with kind of like a tiger mom, and she was like, you gotta find a nice man who has money and can take care of you. And I was saying to Joan, I was like, I don't know if that's gonna happen, you know. And I was like, and I said, Joan, do you think that you really need to have money in a relationship to make you happy? And she goes, it helps. I didn't ask for advice for love again.
I'm going to come down with the questions quickly. Audience, sorry. Run. This is me running. This is what's running I'm willing to do. Okay.
Hi, my name is Jennifer, and I just want to thank you, Alice, for having the courage to quit a high-paying tech role to chase your dreams and make this film. It really resonated with me as an Asian American, and I'm also glad that the happenstance with Will's role, she speaks Chinglish with her mother. It's like almost, I think, a replica of a lot of Asian American lesbian women growing up here. And my question is, will there be a possibility for a Saving Face 2? Or maybe another film that's similar to Saving Face genre? And if so, we will definitely support you.
Thank you so much. I'm glad you said those things about being able to relate to it. I don't think there would be a Saving Face 2 in the sense of a continuation of what's happened to these characters later, because I actually think the specific story is very much it's about this mother and this daughter helping each other learn about love, and like they're each having to confront what they're most afraid of to get there. So I feel like its arc is sort of completed, but that doesn't mean that those specific types of characters don't speak in my head all the time. And so I'm thinking, yes, I am actually working on a queer coming of age teen movie. Like for many years prior, I was like writing scripts for studios to pay bills and whatnot, but this is one I've wanted to write for a while. So I'm in the middle of writing that, and kind of not up to me if it happens or not, but I'm going to do my best. And so we'll see. Yeah.
First off, Alice, thank you for being very nerdy and bringing that nerdiness to the movie, because I have a medicine and engineering background, and my wife's in computer programming, and we really relate. Overall, the part of the movie that I really liked was the comedy. How did you build that? I know part of it's the script, but like getting the chemistry between all the characters, because the comedy is not just there between the two main characters, it's between the daughter and mother, it's between the friend and the daughter. And I'm wondering how you built that.
What a great question. So I don't think I'm a broad comedy writer. Like there are people, like I don't do jokes, like I'm not good at that. I think for me, the comedy I tend to resonate with, and the kind I tend to write is one where the characters are very recognizable. Like they might be very specific, or they might even be like like have very strong opinions, but they're recognizable as humans. But it's maybe because I fundamentally believe most people are good, and that most people are trying to do the best they can. It just happens that so often in our trying to do the best thing we can, it often goes awry. And I think that's like it's sad, but it's also funny, right? Like so when you see a mother and a daughter who are both desperately each being like, this is what a good mother is, and the daughter's like, this is what a daughter should be, and they're just missing each other. I think we laugh because we're like, oh my god, that's totally like what it's like. You know, it doesn't matter what culture you're from, most of us have an experience like that. So I think that was my guiding stars. I would never think, is this funny? I would think, is this real? And it just happens that my natural coping strategy for most things is humor. So I think real for me often is like there's something just like funny about like how we are, how weird and awkward we are as people. You know, we're like, especially because most of us are so like most of us are way smarter and way physically more capable than like we actually need to do most of what we need to do day to day. But we're usually so terrible at relationships, which is like a fascinating thing. So I think that's where I find a lot of my inspiration.
Thank you.
had an extremely hard time with the fact that I was gay. I came out to her my senior year of college, and it was a disaster. And then for like maybe 10 years, like she would meet girls, but we like never talked about. Like it was very like, as you might imagine, like that thing where Chinese people sometimes we just don't talk about stuff. Like you have to really fight to have it happen, and then it's kind of like, why are you bringing this up again? But I think that when this movie, when we got the financing, and I remember flying out to San Francisco because I was doing a casting session there. Oh, wait, actually, we are an indie movie that like half the lines are in Mandarin, and I speak Mandarin fluently, but I don't read or write. And it was going to cost us $3,000 to find someone to like transcribe the lines in Chinese and my mom was like, wow, you're really going to be making this movie. She didn't know what the movie was. And she was like, well, you know, is there anybody I can help? And I'm like, actually, if I can tell you the lines, can you write them in Mandarin? Like, so that, you know, and she was like, okay. And we did this over the phone. She was in the Bay Area and I was in New York. And it was like this total, like we would last 5 minutes before one of us would be like screaming at the other. You know, and she would just be like, what kind of daughter would say this to me? I'm like, my mom's giving me notes now. And I'm like, no, like that was the line, just write it down. And then she would like, slam the phone down. It was like a total, but then eventually we got through it. Like eventually she called back, and then when we got through it, she did a great job. Like she was really wonderful. And so at the end of this, I was so busy, I don't think I was really processing this until I flew out to San Francisco to do this casting session. And I remember this moment when she and I were in her minivan driving down Highway 1, and all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, like this movie is gonna come out. And I just sort of looked at my mom and I was like, Mom, you know, you read the script, you know what this movie's about now. And she's like, yeah. And I was like, you do realize when this movie comes out, all of your friends are gonna know why I'm not married. And she was like, I thought about that. And I was like, well, what do you think? And I totally remember this because she was really quiet. And then she looked at me and she was like, well, I'm not gonna lie, it's gonna be hard. But if this is what you want, then this is what I want for you. And I think in that moment I was like, this is love. You know, like that like maybe I would have been shocked and I was like, okay, I've gotten what I need out of this movie. But and then what happened is I totally, as we're shooting the movie, I'm like, oh, Chinese people are so picky, they're gonna like skewer me, this is gonna be terrible, it's gonna be a disaster. I literally thought the movie would come out, either no one would see it, or people would see it, and I could never eat in a Chinese restaurant again. Oh, that terrible. But what happened was, like, well, two things. One is, when we premiered in San Francisco, the San Francisco Asian American Film Festival, I gave my mom 10 tickets to invite her friends. She invited her closest friends and their husbands. And they were totally, like, they were far more accepting than I expected. They were like, one of my aunties, like, cried through the whole thing, and then called a friend of mine, who's her daughter, to be like, Mommy just wants you to know, like, in case you're gay, it's okay. Mommy was not gay. I was just a lawyer at the time. I was like, Mom, I'm not interested in men, I'm not interested in women, I'm just trying to make a partner, leave me alone. So that happened, and then the Chinese newspapers were really like, we have to support this movie. So I was shocked, like that was really a surprise.
Hello. So this movie is really important to me because it is as much about community and family as it is a capital Q queer movie. Like, I feel like so many movies about being a lesbian or being gay are about how hard that is and like all about that experience, but this movie is about life. And so since it is so much about community and family where there happen to be gay people involved, do you think that made it easier to make? Or, like, as you mentioned that, like, oh, the gays may be written out. Like, do you think that, like, obviously it was hard to fight for that, but do you think it was easier to have the movie be made since it wasn't just about that part of life?
No, I don't think it made it easier. No, but this is such a good question. Like, I'm glad you're asking. I think today that would be true. I think when I was trying to get it made, like 15, 16 years ago, everyone was like, you're never going to make this movie. And they were like, the gay thing was like, no. And the Chinese thing was even more no. Like, it was just like an endless sort of, like I just had people literally sit me down and be, like, the nicest way they would say it is be like, wow, that is really courageous of you. person is the mother. And I love those actors, but I was like, that's not the movie I want to make. Like, that's not. And I also do think that the reason this movie resonates, it's not that you couldn't make it straight or white, but I think that I honestly do believe the more specific you are with something, the more universal it feels. And I think if it had been straight and white, it would be a broad comedy. And people maybe would laugh, and then I think it would be sort of forgettable. Like, they play the game for laughs, right? I think there's something about this that, oddly, I think would make a straight white person watch it and feel something deeper, because I think those sort of identity, I'm not articulating this very well, but I do feel very strongly that this movie loses a lot the moment you strip away those specifics. But yes, I think today, what you're saying is exactly right. I think today it would be easier. Well, I actually shouldn't say it would be easier. It would be far more like, oh, that's interesting, you're doing a new take. Back then, yeah, nobody thought it was going to make. Thank you.
Hi, my question is for Alice. So one of my favorite parts of the movie were all of the Asian Western stereotypes. In fact, one of my favorite scenes in the movie was Will's mom, when she made that remark about Will's friend and soy sauce. That was really funny, and even the name of the film, Saving Face, it's very, it's an Asian saying. So I guess my question is, were those stereotypes drawn from real life experiences? And did you ever come across any stereotypes in the original script that were too inappropriate to pass?
Oh, wow, that's great. Yes, they're wrong. And those are also some of my favorite parts of the movie too, so thank you for calling that out. Yes, I very deliberately did that, and I knew that a couple people, like sometimes people would be a little uncomfortable, like, oh, should you do it? But I felt very strongly, and I still do, that I think the way to combat racism or homophobia is not to pretend it doesn't exist, but to actually sort of shine a light on it, but not necessarily be like, and Ma's right for doing this, and by the way, the more sort of lovingly be like, yep, we all have these stereotypes ingrained in us, and it would be better to bring out a dialogue by that, like, I don't know what your experience is, but growing up in an immigrant family, my parents were totally racist, and like, and like, I understand as new immigrants are like, oh, we lived in an apartment building where I only spoke Mandarin, I didn't speak English yet, but all my friends were Mexican, and so I started speaking Spanish, and my mom freaked out. It was just like, oh my God, we've not moved to this country, so our daughter would, we have to. But what's funny about it, like, on the one hand, you could be like, wow, that's uncomfortable, but it's real. And I think that when you show that, and then you show, like, it was important to me that Ma's arc go from, this is what I know, this is a community I know, and I will never leave this community, to you see her develop a very, sweet relationship with Jay that's based more on being humans, not because he's black and not because he's Chinese, but because they have a human connection. And I personally think that's how you make changes in the world. And so yeah, but again, that's my personal thing. There weren't any stereotypes that I thought, oh, that'd be. I think the other thing is this. I don't think I like to write to stereotype as much as I like to comment on them. I think Ma is not a stereotype and Jay is not a stereotype. They're just people that happen to have specific identities. But I like to point out when one character is using a stereotype on the other and then comment on it.
Thank you.
Hi, so my question is more to Michelle and Lynn. So Alice talked about the fact that making the movie was kind of hard at the time. It's like, oh, you're so brave about it. Like, how was it, like, your experience as an actor to accept the role as a queer person, of a queer person on the screens? Were you afraid to be typecast? Were you very accepting of it? Like, it was really lovely to find out that you didn't even know, it was a queer movie. So how was it?
I was so excited because I was a women's studies major in college, and it's like, yes! I read it. No, I was really, really, really excited. And my parents I have 2 lesbian aunts, so there was never a moment for me where it was awkward or anything other than like, I can't wait to do this. Yeah.
never, strangely enough, I never thought about the political context, the socio-political context of it. I think being lesbian to me just seemed like anything else, like she prefers chicken over steak. Like, to me, it was not such a headliner, you know, and I don't know if, I think maybe in hindsight, because of that, maybe the character just was human, and that was an aspect of her orientation, or her love preference. But I think for me, just as a straight person who through college was always wondering about my own sexuality, it allowed me an opportunity to also just explore, oh, you know, what if I wasn't straight, you know, or what if I'm bisexual? That for me was sort of the fun part of the character. Being lesbian.
Tell us some more.
I actually told my boyfriend at the time he wasn't allowed to see me, and we separated. I didn't want anything to do with my relationship at the time. I really kind of immersed myself. It was a really fun time. I've never said that before. No. Seriously, it was for me just another avenue of exploration, and allowed me to explore something that, as an actor, you love these kinds of challenges. You know, that throw you in the deep end of the pool, or give you opportunities to learn about something, and that's sort of the byproduct of being an actor, is you get to learn about communities, and that. So I really gravitated towards that.
We also had no idea that, like, I remember when we were doing Sundance Press, I think it was our interview with After Ellen, that they told us that we were the first lesbian couple in a film, feature film, that were the leads. And we had never heard that. And, you know, so for us it was sort of like, oh, wow. Like, I don't think I ever knew that, I never expected that it would mean so much to so many people, of seeing themselves on the screen for the first time. You know, I'm still, like, surprised. Like, the other day, Cameron Esposito tweeted out, and she said it was, like, one of the first movies that had a happy ending. And I was like, really? I had no idea. So, like, when we were first doing it, it just seemed like another film where they happened to be gay. And it's just been interesting to see how it can get political in certain ways. And I'm still learning about that.
Well, so many people started to come out and say, this really changed my life. I came out because of this movie. I came out to my parents because of this movie. And that was when, you know, in theater school, they always tell you be an artist because that's how you connect with the audience, because they will see themselves through you. And so you do the work, and you choose to be an artist because that is sort of what sells you when you're young and you're trying to find some purpose in life. But when it actually happens, and people actually start to say, I really connected, and because of that, it changed my life, this thing happens where you're like, oh, you really can have an effect. And that, for me, is sort of the power of the work that you do in this medium. Is, on one hand, it's imagination, creativity, and I get to, you know, do what I've always wanted to do. But then the byproduct is you actually do find an audience, and you have some impact. So that was not something I had ever anticipated. And I always ask you, how do you feel that some people will write letters? And are you moved by the fact? I was asking this last night. So many people still will say, this movie changed my life. So I'm always like, wow, that's amazing.
I mean, like, I was very aware there were no lesbian movies with happy endings. I got some, if I got any flack, it was a little bit over that when the movie first came out, where some people would be like, that just seems too happy. And I understood where they were coming from. Like, I don't think that they were, like, being not smart about it. I understood that because I knew when I was going for that ending that I was just going to go for it. And I was very deliberately doing that. But the one quick thing I'll say about that is, what's possible, because at the time I read it, I was like, and I remember answering this question just being like, I really wanted the world to see what would happen if someone pushes past who they are to go after what they want, and it pays off for them. Because I feel like you can see that not happen where someone doesn't push for it every day in your real life. You don't need to watch a movie for that to happen. And so for me, especially because they're lesbians, especially because they're Asians, I wanted us to see that image. But the really great thing is no one now tells me, I think that ending is too happy. Like people who've seen it last few years, no one even registers that. And to me, that says the world is changing.
Thank you all so much for being here. Everyone, please make sure you check your schedules, your signings and photos. Also, make sure you thank the staff and the volunteers here at ClexaCon, because this is amazing.